The council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive station where representatives from 300 species gathered to make decisions that shaped the galaxy. Today, the air shimmered with tension as holographic displays showed a small, blue-green world orbiting a yellow sun in the outer reaches of known space. Ambassador Thexan of the Vorqual Collective raised 3 of his 4 arms, calling for attention. His species had led the Galactic Council for 8,000 years, and his voice carried the weight of that history. Honored delegates, we have discovered a species that requires our immediate protection. The Yvari, as our xenologists have named them, are unlike any people we have encountered in recent memory. The displays shifted, showing images of the Yvari themselves. They stood perhaps 4 feet tall, with soft gray skin and large, gentle eyes that seemed to hold an ancient sadness. Their bodies were slight, almost fragile, with delicate 3-fingered hands that moved with careful precision. They lived in small villages, built from natural materials, creating art and music that resonated with a haunting beauty. The Yvari are telepathic, Thexan continued. They share thoughts, emotions, and memories with one another. They have never known violence. In their entire recorded history, spanning at least 20,000 years, they have never raised a hand against one of their own. A murmur ran through the chamber. Such a thing was almost unheard of. Even the most peaceful species had some history of conflict, some moment when survival demanded harsh choices. They are completely pacifist, added Dr. Selvik, the Vorqual's chief xenologist. Our observation teams report that they cannot even conceive of intentionally harming another living being. The concept is so foreign to their telepathic nature that attempting to explain warfare to them causes them psychological distress. Ambassador G1 Park of Earth sat quietly in the human delegation section, her dark eyes studying the images carefully. Humanity had been granted junior membership in the Council only 15 years ago, after finally proving they could engage in galactic politics without excessive violence. The other species still watched them with cautious suspicion. We propose, Thexan declared, that the Yvari be granted protected species status at the highest level. Category 1 protection. The chamber erupted in discussion. Category 1 protection was rarely granted. It meant complete isolation from the rest of the galaxy. Military patrols, enforcing a quarantine zone around their entire star system, and severe penalties for any unauthorized contact. G1 raised her hand, waiting for recognition. Thexan's eyes flickered toward her, and she could see the brief hesitation. Humans were still outsiders here, still proving themselves worthy of their place among the stars. The chair recognizes Ambassador Park of Earth, Thexan said finally. G1 stood, her voice calm and measured. We understand the Council's concern for the Yvari. They are clearly a gentle and unique people. However, we question whether Category 1 protection is truly in their best interest. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates turned to stare at the human delegation in surprise. Explain, Thexan said, his tone careful. Category 1 protection treats them like specimens in a museum, G1 said. It denies them any chance to grow, to change, to have meaningful contact with the broader galaxy. We propose Category 3 protection instead, allowing limited contact under supervision, giving them the chance to develop at their own pace while still being safeguarded. Your species has been in the galaxy for barely a generation, snapped Ambassador Krell of the Saxith Empire, his scales rattling with irritation. You cannot possibly understand the responsibility we bear for species less fortunate than ourselves. Perhaps that's exactly why our perspective has value, G1 replied evenly. We remember what it was like to be the newcomers, to have others making decisions about our future without our input. The debate continued for hours, but in the end, the vote was overwhelming. 287 species voted for Category 1 protection. Only humanity, and a handful of others, dissented. The Yvari would be isolated, protected by the full might of the Galactic Council, preserved in their peaceful innocence, forever. As the session ended, G1 gathered her notes, and prepared to leave. Admiral Min Jun Choi, the human military observer assigned to the council, approached her with a troubled expression. "You did what you could," he said quietly. "They made their choice." "I know," Ji-won sighed. "I just hope it's the right one." Far away, on the Yavari homeworld, the people went about their peaceful lives, unaware of the galactic politics swirling around them. They tended their gardens, created their art, and shared their thoughts in the gentle communion of their telepathic bonds. Children played in the meadows, while adults crafted intricate sculptures that captured the beauty of their world. Elder Mian sat beneath a flowering tree, his ancient mind reaching out to touch the thoughts of his people. He felt their contentment, their joy, their simple pleasure in existence. For 20,000 years, his people had lived this way, and he hoped they would continue for 20,000 more. In the darkness between stars, something else stirred. The Krelith swarm had been watching the council's deliberations with great interest. They were pirates, raiders, and slavers, caring nothing for galactic law or the supposed sanctity of protected species. They saw only opportunity. Their commander, a scarred veteran named Vexoth, studied the data his spies had gathered. A peaceful species, completely defenseless, protected only by council patrol ships that followed predictable routes and rigid engagement protocols. The Yavari could be captured and sold to the highest bidder as servants, pets, or curiosities for the wealthy of a dozen different empires. "Begin preparations," Vexoth ordered. "We move in 3 cycles." His subordinates scattered to ready the fleet. The Krelith had learned long ago that the council was slow to act, bound by endless debates and procedures. By the time they organized a proper response, the swarm would be long gone with their prize. In the council chambers, the protection protocols were being implemented. Patrol routes were established. Warning beacons were positioned at the edge of the Yavari system, and strict no-contact orders were distributed to every registered ship in the sector. Ji-won watched the proceedings and felt a cold knot of worry in her stomach. They were building a cage of protection around the Yavari, one that looked strong but had never been truly tested. She thought of Earth's history, of all the times good intentions had led to terrible outcomes, of how protection without strength was just another word for vulnerability. "I hope we're wrong about this," she murmured to Admiral Choi. "So do I," he replied. The Yavari remained in their peaceful isolation, protected by laws and good intentions, while in the darkness, predators began their approach. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson about the difference between protection on paper and protection in practice. And humanity was about to teach it. The attack came without warning during the night cycle, when the Council patrol fleet was at minimum staffing. Vexoth had planned it perfectly, studying the patrol patterns for weeks, identifying every weakness in the defensive perimeter around the Yavari system. The Krelith swarm dropped out of faster-than-light travel in 12 different locations simultaneously, overwhelming the sensor networks with false signatures and jamming signals. By the time the Council ships realized what was happening, half of them were already burning wreckage tumbling through the void. Captain Thronus of the Vorqual patrol cruiser Steadfast watched in horror as his tactical display lit up with hostile contacts. 3 Krelith destroyers were bearing down on his position, their weapons already charging. "All ships, this is Steadfast Actual. We are under attack. Repeat. The Yavari system is under attack." He slammed his hand on the communications panel. "Sound the alert to Council Command. We need reinforcements immediately." But the Krelith had planned for that too. Jamming fields spread across the system like a blanket, cutting off long-range communications. The distress signal would get through eventually, but it would be fragmented, delayed. By the time Council Command received it and organized a response, it would be too late. The battle was brutally one-sided. The Council patrol ships were designed for law enforcement, not military combat. They had shields meant to withstand asteroid impacts and weapons capable of disabling small pirate craft. The Krelith swarm brought warships built for conquest, covered in scars from 100 previous raids. Steadfast shuddered as plasma bolts tore through her shields. Thronis gripped his command chair as the deck tilted beneath him. "Return fire! All batteries!" he shouted. But he already knew it was hopeless. His ship's weapons scored the armor of the nearest Krelith destroyer, but failed to penetrate. A second volley from the enemy ships smashed through Steadfast's main reactor. "Abandon ship!" Thronis ordered as alarms screamed throughout the vessel. He stayed at his post, manually broadcasting a final message on all frequencies, hoping someone, somewhere would hear it. "The Krelith swarm has breached the protection zone. They need help. Someone please." The transmission ended as Steadfast exploded in a brilliant flash of light. On the Yvari homeworld below, Elder Miyan was the first to sense that something was wrong. The telepathic network that connected all Yvari began to ripple with confusion and fear. His people had no experience with such emotions on this scale. Then the Krelith landing craft began to descend, and the Yvari learned what terror truly meant. The raiders moved with practiced efficiency, having conducted operations like this dozens of times before. They swept through Yvari settlements with stun weapons and capture nets, rounding up the helpless inhabitants like livestock. The Yvari could not fight back, could not even conceive of fighting back. They could only flee or huddle together, their telepathic screams of distress echoing through their shared consciousness. Miyan tried to comfort his people, tried to send thoughts of peace and calm through the network. But his own fear was too great. He felt every moment of terror from his people as the Krelith dragged them toward the landing craft. Felt the confusion and betrayal as they wondered why this was happening to them. The distress was so powerful that it began to bleed beyond their world, touching the minds of any telepathic or empathic species within range. Across dozens of nearby systems, sensitive individuals clutched their heads in pain, overwhelmed by the psychic tsunami of Yvari suffering. At the Galactic Council headquarters, the emergency session convened 6 hours after the first reports arrived. Ambassador Thexan stood before the assembled delegates, his usual composure shaken. "The situation is catastrophic," he announced. "The entire patrol fleet has been destroyed. The Krelith swarm has landed on the Yvari homeworld and is conducting large-scale abduction operations. Our preliminary estimates suggest they have already captured several thousand Yvari." The chamber erupted in outrage and demands for action. But as the debate began, it quickly became clear that action would not come quickly. The Vorqual wanted to organize a proper military response, which would require assembling ships from a dozen different species. The Saxith Empire insisted on attempting diplomatic channels first, arguing that opening negotiations might save Yvari lives. "We must follow proper procedures," Ambassador Krell insisted. "If we respond with excessive force, we risk escalating this into a broader conflict." "The Yvari are being enslaved right now," shouted a delegate from the Marathi cluster. "While we debate procedures, they suffer, and rushing in without a plan will only make things worse." Krell shot back. "We need to consider sanctions, trade restrictions, diplomatic pressure." G1 Park sat in the human delegation section, listening to the debate with growing fury. She looked at Admiral Choi, who sat rigid in his seat. His jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscles working. "How long?" she whispered to him. "How long for what?" he replied, though his eyes told her he already knew the question. "How long until the council actually does something?" Choi glanced at the debating delegates, at the procedural motions being filed, at the committees being formed to study the situation. "Weeks," he said quietly. "Maybe months." Ji-won made her decision. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. "Ambassador Park," Thexan said, "the chair has not recognized you." "I don't care," Ji-won said flatly. She gathered her materials and looked directly at the Vorqual ambassador. "You created Category 1 protection to safeguard the Yvari. You promised them they would be safe. You failed. Ambassador, your tone is inappropriate." "My tone," Ji-won's voice rose. "Right now, as we sit here debating procedures and protocols, the Yvari are being dragged onto slave ships. They are terrified. They are alone. They believed the galaxy would protect them, and we are failing them with every second we waste." She turned to leave, and the entire human delegation rose with her. Admiral Choi fell into step beside her, along with Captain Sung-Ho Kim and the other military observers. "Where are you going?" Thekson demanded. Ji-won paused at the exit and looked back. "To do what we should have done from the beginning. Humanity is withdrawing from this debate. We will handle this ourselves." "You have no authority," Krell shouted. "Any unauthorized military action will result in immediate expulsion from the Council." "Then expel us," Choi said quietly. "We'll sleep just fine." The human delegation walked out, leaving the council chamber in chaos behind them. As they made their way to the docking bay, where the human ships waited, G1 activated her secure communicator. "This is Ambassador Park to Fleet Command," she said. "Authorization code, Park Delta 77 Whiskey. Initiate Operation Righteous Fury." On the other end of the line, Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the 3rd Human Fleet, smiled grimly. "We've been waiting for that order, Ambassador. The fleet is already moving. We'll be in the Yavari system in 18 hours. The Council will be furious," G1 warned. "Let them," Chen replied. "We didn't come to the stars to file paperwork while innocents suffer." 3rd Fleet out. As the human ships prepared to jump to faster than light speed, the Yavari continued to suffer. Elder Mian, dragged aboard a Krelith slave ship, sent one final telepathic pulse into the void. A desperate cry for help that he knew might never be answered. But unknown to him, humanity had already heard, and they were coming with fire and fury. The 3rd Human Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Yavari system like an avenging hammer. 38 warships materialized in perfect formation, their weapons already charged, and targeting solutions locked. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Indomitable, and surveyed the tactical display. The Krelith had scattered their forces across the system, confident that no one would challenge them quickly enough to matter. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Communications. Open a channel to all Krelith vessels," Chen ordered. "Let's give them one chance." The channel opened, and Chen's voice broadcast across every Krelith ship in the system. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Forces. You are in violation of Galactic Council protection protocols and have committed acts of violence against a peaceful species. You will immediately release all Yavari captives, power down your weapons, and prepare to be boarded. You have 60 seconds to comply." On the Krelith command ship, Vexoth stared at the human fleet in disbelief. Where had they come from? The Council couldn't possibly have organized a response this quickly. He sneered at the transmission. "Humans," he spat. "The Council's newest puppies, come to bark at their betters." He opened his own channel. "This system is ours by right of conquest. Turn your ships around and leave, or we will destroy you." Chen checked her chronometer. 45 seconds remaining. "Did you hear me, human? We have thousands of Yavari aboard our ships. If you attack, they will die in the crossfire." 30 seconds. Vexoth's confidence wavered slightly. The human ships were not withdrawing. If anything, they were advancing, tightening their formation in a pattern he recognized as a pre-attack maneuver. He had heard stories about humans, about their brief but violent wars with other species before joining the Council, about their refusal to follow the normal rules of engagement. "You're bluffing," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. 15 seconds, Chen said calmly. "All ships, prepare to engage. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Precision strikes only. Protect the Yavari at all costs." "Wait," Vexoth shouted. "We can negotiate. We'll return half the Yavari if you—" "Time's up," Chen said. "Fire." The human fleet opened fire with surgical precision. Their weapons had been designed after studying decades of galactic conflicts, learning from the mistakes of other species, and incorporating human military doctrine that stretched back thousands of years. Each shot was calculated, targeted, measured for maximum effect with minimum collateral damage. Krelith shields flared and collapsed under the withering assault. Their weapons, designed to overwhelm inferior opponents with raw firepower, couldn't track the human ships as they executed combat maneuvers that would have torn apart vessels from most other species. Human crews, bred in the gravity well of Earth, could withstand accelerations that would kill or disable other galactic species. Within minutes, 3 Krelith destroyers were burning hulks. The rest scattered, trying to flee or regroup, but the human formation split seamlessly, pursuit groups peeling off to chase down every enemy vessel. "Launch assault teams," Chen ordered. "Get our people on those slave ships. I want every Yvari recovered." Across the system, human boarding craft launched from their carriers, small and fast ships piloted by men and women who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. They approached the Krelith vessels with controlled aggression, breaching hulls and deploying Marines in full combat armor. Sergeant He-Jin Song led her squad through the corridors of a Krelith slave transport, her weapons sweeping for targets. The Krelith guards tried to mount a defense, but they were used to fighting species that followed galactic conventions, that worried about collateral damage and proportional response. Humans didn't fight that way, not when protecting the helpless. Song's squad moved like a single organism, covering angles and advancing with practiced precision. When they encountered a group of Krelith trying to use Yvari captives as shields, Song didn't hesitate. Her team's marksman, Private Taeyang Moon, took 3 precision shots in under 2 seconds, dropping each Krelith guard without harming a single Yvari. "Clear!" Song shouted. "Medic up!" Corporal Ji-Hoon Kang rushed forward, his medical pack already open. The Yvari huddled together, their large eyes wide with terror, their telepathic cries of distress so powerful that even the non-telepathic humans could feel a faint echo of their fear. "It's okay," Kang said softly, injecting a sedative into the nearest Yvari. "You're safe now. We've got you." But the Yvari didn't understand. They had never known violence before, and now they were surrounded by it, caught between their captors and these new arrivals in heavy armor, carrying weapons. Their telepathic network was a storm of confusion and fear. Song knelt beside them, removing her helmet so they could see her face. She had learned about the Yvari during the briefing, learned that they responded to emotional honesty, to openness. "My name is He-Jin," she said gently. "We came to help you. I know you're scared. I know this is overwhelming. But we will get you home. I promise." Something in her voice, in the sincerity of her emotions, cut through the telepathic chaos. The nearest Yvari, a young one barely 3 feet tall, reached out tentatively and touched Song's hand. The physical contact created a brief telepathic connection, and the Yvari gasped as they felt her emotions anger at the Krelith. Fierce protective instinct toward the Yvari, determination to see this through no matter the cost. The young Yvari turned to the others and sent a pulse through their network. "The humans are friends. They came to save us." More human teams fought their way through other Krelith ships. Captain Sung-Ho Kim led a special forces unit in an assault on Vexoth's command ship, where the Krelith commander had barricaded himself with a group of Yvari elders, including Mian. "You'll kill them if you attack," Vexoth screamed over the communications channel. "I have explosives rigged throughout this section. Come any closer and I'll detonate." Sung-Ho studied the ship's layout on his tactical display. The Krelith was desperate and cornered, which made him dangerous. But Sung-Ho hadn't survived 3 combat deployments by taking unnecessary risks. He switched to a private channel with his demolitions expert. "Minseo, can you breach from the exterior without setting off his charges?" Lieutenant Choi Minseo examined the hull scans. "Maybe. It'll be tight, but I think I can cut through here without triggering internal sensors. Give me 8 minutes. "You have 5, Sung-Ho replied. While Minseo worked, Sung-Ho kept Vexoth talking, drawing his attention away from the hull. "You know this is over, right? Your fleet is destroyed. Your ships are being captured. You can't escape." "Maybe not," Vexoth snarled. "But I can take these precious Yvari with me. The Council will remember that you humans got them killed." "Will they?" Sung-Ho asked. "Or will they remember that you took them hostage?" That you used innocent lives as shields because you were too coward to face the consequences of your actions? The hull suddenly peeled away as Min Seo completed her cutting, and Sung-ho's team poured through the breach in a perfectly coordinated assault. Vexoth spun toward them, his hand reaching for the detonator, but Sung-ho was faster. A single shot from his rifle sent the device flying from the Krelith's hand. Mission accomplished, Sung-ho reported. Hostages secure. Primary target captured. Across the system, similar scenes played out on every Krelith vessel. Within 3 hours of the human fleet's arrival, the battle was effectively over. Krelith ships burned or drifted helpless in space, their crews killed or captured. Every single Yvari had been recovered. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, receiving reports from all units. 0 human fatalities. 17 wounded, none critically. All Yvari accounted for and receiving medical care. But as she watched the last Krelith ship surrender, she made a decision that would send shockwaves through the galaxy. She opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, well done today, but we're not finished. She paused, letting that sink in. The Krelith fleet is attempting to scatter and escape. Under normal galactic rules of engagement, we would let them run. But I'm not interested in normal rules. I'm interested in sending a message. On several human ships, Council observers who had been monitoring the battle began protesting. Admiral, the battle is over. The Yvari are safe. You cannot pursue a defeated enemy. Chen ignored them. All ships, pursue and engage. No Krelith vessel leaves this system. Not one. Let the galaxy know what happens when you hurt those under our protection. The human fleet split into pursuit formations and began the hunt. The lesson had only just begun. The Krelith destroyer Ravager limped through space, its engines sputtering, leaving a trail of debris and coolant behind it. Captain Drexus had watched his fleet torn apart by the human warships and decided that survival mattered more than pride. He ordered his ship to flee at maximum speed, hoping to reach the edge of the system before the humans could catch him. He was wrong. The UES Relentless overtook Ravager within an hour, matching its course and speed with casual ease. Commander Park Jae-won studied the damaged Krelith ship on his tactical display and opened a communications channel. Krelith vessel Ravager, this is Commander Park of the Relentless. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Drexus stared at his sensors in disbelief. The battle was over. The Yvari were safe. Why were the humans still pursuing? We are leaving the system. We are no longer a threat. You were a threat the moment you decided to attack a protected species, Park replied. You don't get to just run away and try again somewhere else. Power down your engines. This is your only warning. Drexus made the fatal mistake of trying to run. He diverted all remaining power to engines and attempted to jump to faster than light speed. The Relentless responded with a single, precise shot that vaporized Ravager's jump drive. I gave you a warning, Park said quietly, then ordered his weapons officer to finish it. Similar scenes played out across the system as human ships hunted down every fleeing Krelith vessel. Those who surrendered were taken prisoner. Those who tried to fight or flee were destroyed. The humans were methodical, relentless, and absolutely unforgiving. Aboard Admiral Chen's flagship, the Council observers were in an uproar. Ambassador Pelthix, of the Marathi cluster, a species known for their diplomatic nature, confronted Chen on her own bridge. Admiral, you must cease this pursuit immediately. This is a violation of every galactic convention of warfare. The enemy is retreating. The battle is won. Chen turned to face him, her expression carved from stone. Ambassador, with all due respect, your galactic conventions are exactly why the Yvari were attacked in the first place. That is absurd. We have rules of engagement to prevent excessive bloodshed. Your rules taught species like the Krelith that they can raid protected worlds, and the worst that will happen is they have to retreat and try again later, Chen interrupted. Well, we're teaching a different lesson today. You're teaching them to fear you, to hate you. Good. Chen said flatly. I want every pirate, slaver, and raider in this galaxy to be absolutely terrified of what will happen if they touch a species under human protection. I want them to know that if they attack the defenseless, we won't file a complaint or impose sanctions. We will hunt them down, and we will end them. Pelthix stared at her in shock. This is barbaric. No, Ambassador. Barbaric is what the Krelith did to the Yvari. This is justice. Chen turned back to her tactical display. Now, unless you plan to physically stop me, I suggest you return to your quarters and file whatever reports you need to file. We have work to finish. On the surface of the Yvari homeworld, a different kind of work was already underway. Human engineers and aid workers had deployed the moment the orbital space was secure, bringing medical supplies, temporary shelters, and reconstruction equipment. Sergeant Song walked through a Yvari settlement that had been ransacked by the Krelith. Her combat armor exchanged for simple fatigues and a medic's armband. The Yvari watched her with cautious curiosity, their telepathic network slowly calming as they realized the violence had truly ended. A young Yvari approached her hesitantly, the same one who had touched her hand during the rescue. Song knelt to be at eye level with the small being. Hello again, she said softly. How are you feeling? The Yvari reached out and touched her hand again. And Song felt a rush of emotions through the brief telepathic contact. Gratitude, lingering fear, confusion about why anyone would help them, wonder at these strange beings who fought so fiercely, yet could be so gentle. You saved us, the young Yvari said aloud, their voice like wind chimes. Why? Song thought about how to answer that in a way the Yvari would understand. Because you needed help, and we could give it. Because leaving you to suffer would have been wrong. But you killed for us. You did violence. Yes, Song admitted. And it will haunt some of us for the rest of our lives. Violence always has a cost, even when it's necessary. But some things are worth that cost. Your lives are worth it. Elder Mian approached, moving slowly through the settlement. He had been one of the hostages on Vexoth's ship, had witnessed Captain Kim's team rescue them with controlled fury and precise violence. The contrast between human ferocity and human gentleness was difficult for his telepathic mind to reconcile. I need to understand, Mian said to Song. Your people are capable of such terrible violence, yet you use it only to protect others. How is this possible? What it's no. We have Li One. Song stood, looking at the ancient being with respect. My people learned a long time ago that the capacity for violence is just a tool. It's not good or bad by itself. What matters is why you use it, and whether you can control it. She gestured to the human aid workers helping repair damaged buildings. We can be warriors when we need to be, but we'd rather be builders. Mian absorbed this, sharing the concept through the telepathic network. The Yvari had never conceived of violence as a tool, as something that could be controlled and directed toward good ends. To them, it was simply an evil to be avoided. The humans were teaching them a new perspective that sometimes, to protect peace, you needed the strength to defend it. In orbit, the last Krelith ship was cornered by 3 human destroyers. The ship's captain, a young Krelith named Sarax, knew she had no chance of escape. She opened a channel to the nearest human vessel. I surrender, she said simply. Commander Li Sojung of the UES Dauntless studied the Krelith ship. Scans showed it had minimal weapons, was barely combat capable. This had probably been a support vessel, dragged into the raid by Vexoth's orders. Power down all systems and prepare to be boarded, Li ordered. But her tone was less harsh than it had been with other Krelith ships. If you cooperate, you'll be treated fairly. When Li's boarding team secured the ship, they found the crew consisted largely of young, inexperienced Krelith. Many had been pressed into service, forced to join the raid against their will. Li made a decision that would have surprised the council observers. These aren't hardened raiders, she told Admiral Chen over a secure channel. They're kids who got caught up in something bigger than them, Request permission to separate them from the main prisoners, and offer them clemency in exchange for testimony against the raid leaders. Chen considered this. The hunt had been about sending a message, but it had also been about justice, not blind revenge. Granted, but make sure they understand, if any of them ever participate in something like this again, there won't be a second chance. The message spread quickly through the captured Krelith. The humans would show mercy to those who deserved it, but they would be absolutely merciless to those who preyed on the innocent. It was a lesson that would be remembered. Back on the Yavari homeworld, human teachers had begun offering basic self-defense instruction to any Yavari who wanted to learn. Not combat training, the Yavari would never be warriors, but simple techniques to break free from grabs, to run effectively, to recognize danger and respond to it. "We're not trying to change who you are," explained Lieutenant Kang Ji-won, demonstrating a basic escape technique to a group of curious Yavari. "You're a peaceful people, and that's beautiful. But peace is easier to maintain when you have at least some ability to protect yourselves." One of the Yavari, a teacher named Sylvan, practiced the technique hesitantly. "This feels wrong. We should never need to harm others." "You're not harming anyone," Ji-won corrected gently. "You're just making it harder for others to harm you. There's a difference." The concept slowly took hold. The Yavari began to understand that self-defense wasn't the same as aggression, that protecting oneself didn't mean abandoning their peaceful nature. Weeks later, when the last Krelith ship had been captured or destroyed, Admiral Chen compiled her after-action report. 0 human fatalities. 23 wounded, all recovering. Every Yavari recovered safely. Complete destruction of the Krelith raiding fleet, and a message sent to the entire galaxy that would echo for generations. She transmitted the report to both Fleet Command and the Galactic Council, knowing the political storm that was coming. But as she watched her ships form up for the journey home, with rescued Yavari aboard being cared for by human medical staff, she knew she'd made the right choice. Protection without teeth was just a pretty lie. The Yavari had learned that the hard way. Now the rest of the galaxy would learn it too. 3 months after the battle, Ambassador Ji-won Park stood before the Galactic Council once again. The chamber was packed with delegates from every member species, all of them watching her with expressions ranging from anger, to respect, to fear. The formal censure motion had been filed by the Vorqual Collective, supported by 87 other species. Ambassador Thexan read the charges with grave formality. The Galactic Council hereby censures humanity for excessive use of military force, unauthorized military action in a protected zone, violations of established rules of engagement, and the pursuit and destruction of enemy forces that had clearly withdrawn from combat. Ji-won listened without expression. She had known this was coming. The human military response resulted in the complete destruction of the Krelith raiding fleet. With an estimated 12,000 casualties, Thexan continued. "While we acknowledge that your actions successfully recovered the Yavari captives, the level of force employed was grossly disproportionate to the tactical requirements." Ambassador Krell of the Saxith Empire stood, his scales gleaming under the chamber lights. "The humans have shown themselves to be exactly what we feared when we granted them council membership: violent, aggressive, and unable to follow civilized rules of conduct. I move that humanity be suspended from the council for a period of no less than 20 standard years." Murmurs of agreement rippled through parts of the chamber, but Ji-won noticed that not everyone was nodding along. Several delegations sat quietly, watching her with something that looked like understanding. When the chamber quieted, Ji-won rose to speak. She had prepared a careful diplomatic response, full of the appropriate regrets and promises to do better. But as she looked around the chamber, at the same delegates who had debated and delayed while the Yavari suffered, she discarded her prepared remarks. "We are not sorry," she said, simply. The chamber erupted in outrage. Thexan banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. "Ambassador Park, this council expects—" "I know what this council expects," Ji-won interrupted. "You expect us to apologize for saving lives, to express remorse for stopping slavers, to promise that next time we'll wait patiently while you debate and form committees and file the proper paperwork while innocent beings are dragged away to lives of suffering and servitude. She walked to the center of the chamber, her voice carrying clearly to every delegate. We will not do that. We will never do that. Because the Yavari didn't need a committee. They didn't need a strongly worded resolution or economic sanctions. They needed someone to actually help them. And they needed it immediately. You violated every established protocol, Krell shouted. Your protocols failed them, G1 shot back. You created Category 1 protection, promised them safety, and when they needed you most, all you could offer was debate and delay. Where was the Vorqual Collective when the Krelith landed? Where was the Saxith Empire when Yavari children were being dragged onto slave ships? Ambassador So-Yun Lee, who had been promoted to senior delegate after G1's actions, stood beside her. The Council wants to punish us for doing what you should have done. You want us to apologize for caring more about results than procedures. There must be order, Thexan insisted. There must be rules. Without them, the galaxy descends into chaos, and without action, So-Yun replied quietly, the galaxy descends into comfortable indifference, where good intentions matter more than good results. Before the debate could continue, the chamber doors opened. A delegation of Yavari entered, led by Elder Mian. They had never attended a council session before, had never even left their homeworld until humans brought them here. The sight of the small, gentle beings silenced the chamber immediately. Mian walked slowly to the speaking platform, his movements carrying the weight of his great age. He looked around at the assembled species, his large eyes taking in every delegate. I speak for my people, he said, his soft voice amplified by the chamber's systems. We have listened to this debate, and we must offer our perspective. Elder Mian, Thexan said carefully, we understand you may feel gratitude toward the humans, but gratitude? Mian's telepathic presence touched every mind in the chamber, letting them feel a fraction of what his people had experienced. You protected us with laws. The humans protected us with action. You promised us safety. The humans gave us safety. He turned to look directly at the human delegation. My people have been pacifists for 20,000 years. We have never understood violence, never comprehended how thinking beings could harm one another. The humans taught us something new, that sometimes violence is the only language that predators understand. But at what cost? Asked Ambassador Pelthix. The humans killed thousands. They pursued defeated enemies. They showed no mercy. They showed perfect mercy, Mian corrected gently. They showed mercy to us, to the victims, to the helpless. They showed none to those who would prey upon the innocent. That is exactly the mercy the galaxy needs. He paused, letting that sink in, then continued. This council speaks often of civilization, of proper conduct, of following rules. But what use are rules that protect the guilty more than the innocent? What value is civilization if it cannot defend those who cannot defend themselves? The chamber was utterly silent. No one had expected this quiet rebuke from the peaceful Yavari. My people have made a decision, Mian announced. We hereby request that the Galactic Council remove the Category 1 protection designation from our world. Shocked gasps echoed through the chamber. Furthermore, Mian continued, we formally request that humanity be granted responsibility for our protection and security. We trust them to keep us safe in a way that we no longer trust this council. Thexan looked stunned. Elder Mian, surely you don't mean— I mean exactly what I say, Mian replied firmly. And we are not alone in this sentiment. The chamber doors opened again, and 16 more delegations entered, representatives from every Category 1 protected species in the galaxy. They had all been following the Yavari situation closely. They had all seen what happened when the Council's protection failed, and what happened when humanity stepped in. One by one, they made the same request. They wanted human protection. Over the following hours, the political landscape of the galaxy shifted. The Council couldn't afford to lose oversight of 17 protected species. After intense negotiations, a compromise was reached. Humanity would be integrated into the Council's protection fleet as a semi-autonomous force, operating under their own rules of engagement, but coordinating with Council oversight. It was less than the Council wanted, and more than humanity had expected. But it was a recognition that their approach, for all its violence, had achieved something the Council's procedures had not: actual protection. 6 months later, Admiral Chen stood on the surface of the Yivari homeworld, attending the dedication of a new monument in the central settlement. The Yivari had spent months crafting it, pouring their artistic talents into creating something that would honor what had happened. The monument showed a human and a Yivari standing side by side, the human's hand resting protectively on the Yivari's shoulder. The base was inscribed in both languages. True protection is not a promise. It is a presence. Elder Mian stood beside Chen, his aged mind still sharp and clear. "You changed us," he said quietly. "We are still a peaceful people, but we are no longer naive. We understand now that peace must sometimes be defended." "I hope we didn't take too much from you," Chen replied, thinking of the Yivari's gentle nature, worried that exposure to violence might have damaged something precious. "You took nothing," Mian assured her. "You gave us something we lacked: the knowledge that good beings will stand against evil when necessary. You reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten." "What's that?" "That civilization is not measured by how well you follow rules in times of peace. It is measured by what you are willing to do when the innocent suffer." Chen looked at the monument, at the image of human and Yivari together. Across the galaxy, on 16 other protected worlds, similar monuments were being built. Humanity had earned something rare and precious: not just respect, but trust. The Council had tried to protect these species with laws and protocols, with procedures and proper forms. They had built walls of rules and hoped they would be enough. But humanity had taught a different lesson, one that was spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. Protection without strength is just hope. Laws without enforcement are just words. And sometimes, the only way to preserve peace is to be absolutely committed to defending it. With every resource at your disposal, with complete dedication, with the willingness to do whatever is necessary to keep the innocent safe. In the Council chambers, the debates continued about proper use of force, about proportional response, about following established procedures. But in the protected zones across the galaxy, there was a new presence. Human ships patrolled the borders. Human soldiers trained local forces. Human diplomats worked to resolve conflicts before they turned violent. And everyone from the smallest settlement to the largest empire knew one thing with absolute certainty: if you attacked a protected species, if you preyed upon the helpless, if you ignored the warnings and violated the sanctity of the innocent, humanity would come for you. Not in months, not after debates and committees and proper procedures. They would come immediately, with overwhelming force, with absolute commitment. And they would not stop until justice was done. That was the final lesson humanity taught the galaxy. Not that might makes right, but that the right must have might behind it. Not that violence solves all problems, but that refusing to use violence when necessary solves none. The Galactic Council had tried to protect the Yivari with promises and procedures. Humanity had protected them with action and commitment. In the end, the galaxy learned which kind of protection actually mattered. And they learned it from a species that had walked among the stars for barely a generation, but understood something that ancient civilizations had forgotten: that the measure of a civilization is not found in its laws, but in its willingness to enforce them when the innocent cry out for help. The humans called it responsibility. The Yivari called it salvation. The Council called it excessive. History would call it necessary. Ambassador Park stood with Admiral Chen at the monument dedication, watching as Yivari children played nearby children who would grow up free because someone had been willing to fight for them. She thought about the censure motion, about the political battles ahead, about the species who still questioned humanity's methods. Let them question, she thought. Let them debate and analyze and critique. We'll be too busy actually protecting people to care. Beside her, Admiral Chen smiled as if reading her thoughts. Ji-won looked at the monument one last time, at the words carved into its base. True protection is not a promise. It is a presence. Yes, she said. We have 17 systems to watch over now. Let's make sure they never need to build monuments to remember being saved. They walked away together as the sun set on the Yavari homeworld, their shadows stretching long across the peaceful settlement. Behind them, human and Yavari worked side by side, building a future where protection meant more than paperwork, where safety was guaranteed not by laws alone, but by the unwavering commitment of those strong enough to defend the weak. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Now it was time to build something better.
The chamber was silent except for the hum of anti-gravity generators. Ambassador Jakara stood at the center of the circular room, his scales reflecting the blue emergency lights. Around him, 47 species of the Galactic Council waited. None of them spoke. They all knew why they were here. The quarantine stations are gone, Jakara said finally. His voice was steady, but his tail twitched nervously. All 12 of them. No distress signals, no wreckage, just gone. High Coordinator Melthos shifted in her crystal body. Light bent through her form as she processed this information. When did we lose contact? 6 days ago, Jakara replied. We sent scout ships 3 days ago. They haven't returned, a murmur rippled through the chamber. The Krillian delegate, a being made of swirling gas, spoke in a voice like wind through caves. What about long-range sensors? Jakara touched a control panel. A hologram appeared above the council floor. It showed a map of the galaxy. At the edge was a small yellow dot labeled Sol System. Around it was a red circle marking the quarantine zone. This is what we see, Jakara said. The hologram changed. Now there were hundreds of bright points moving away from Sol. They looked like stars, but they were moving far too fast. Energy signatures, Melthos said quietly. Fusion reactors. Hundreds of them. 847, Jakara corrected. And they're heading toward our space. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate military action. Others wanted to flee. A few sat frozen in shock. Jakara raised his hand for silence. It took several minutes before the noise died down. We need to discuss what this means, he said. 200 years ago, we discovered humans during what they called their atomic age. We watched them for 5 years. What we saw, he paused, choosing his words carefully. What we saw frightened us. They were in the middle of a Cold War. 2 human nations pointed thousands of nuclear weapons at each other. They had enough firepower to destroy their entire planet 10 times over. They wrote stories about ending their own world. They seemed to enjoy the idea. They were animals, one delegate spat. Predators killing each other for sport. Perhaps, Jakara agreed. But they were also incredibly dangerous, so the council voted to quarantine them. We placed monitoring stations around their system. We jammed their radio signals so they couldn't detect us. We decided to check on them every 100 years to see if they had survived. Melthos glowed brighter. And now the monitoring stations are destroyed. Did the humans destroy themselves? Did their weapons finally consume them? That's what we hoped, Jakara admitted. But those energy signatures suggest otherwise. He pulled up another file. Images appeared in the hologram. Pictures of humans throughout their history, fighting in trenches, dropping bombs from aircraft, soldiers storming beaches while their friends died around them. Look at these images, Jakara said. In their first World War, millions died. They used poison gas, machine guns, artillery that turned battlefields into hellscapes. Any reasonable species would have stopped. Humans fought for 4 years, he changed the image. 20 years later, they did it again. This time, 60 million died. Cities burned. They invented weapons that could vaporize entire populations, and still they fought. They never surrendered even when their cities were rubble. What's your point? The Krillian delegate asked. My point is that humans don't stop, Jakara said. They don't give up. They fight until they win, or until they're extinct. That's why we quarantined them. We thought isolation would either calm them down or they would destroy themselves. Clearly we were wrong, Melthos said. A younger delegate, a Vaxian like Jakara, raised his hand. What if they're not hostile? What if they just want to meet us? Several older delegates laughed. Jakara didn't. Then why destroy our monitoring stations? He asked. Why not try to communicate first? The young delegate had no answer. Jakara continued. I've spent the last 6 days reviewing everything we know about humans, their psychology, their culture, their approach to problems. And I'm worried. About what? Melthos asked. They solve every problem with violence, Jakara explained. When they had diseases, they declared war on them. When they had hunger, they fought against it. When they explored their planet, they conquered it. They even talk about fighting against time, against age, against death itself. Everything is a battle to them. He pulled up more files. Human literature, movies, games, all of them filled with conflict and war. They love it, he said quietly. Fighting is in their nature. It's how they think, how they organize themselves. They make games about war. They write songs about battles. They tell their children stories about heroes who never give up even against impossible odds. The chamber was quiet again. Several delegates looked sick. The idea of a species that glorified violence was deeply disturbing to most of them. So what do we do? Someone asked. Before anyone could answer, alarms blared. Red lights flooded the chamber. A mechanical voice announced, Emergency docking procedure initiated. Medical teams to Bay 7. The delegates rushed to the observation windows. In the docking bay below, a small ship was being pulled inside by tractor beams. It was a Vaxian scout vessel, but it barely looked like one anymore. The hull was melted in places. Whole sections were missing. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. That's one of our scout ships, Jakara said. The ones we sent to Sol. Medical teams in environmental suits swarmed the ship as soon as it was inside. They cut through the airlock with plasma torches. Smoke poured out. 3 bodies were carried away on stretchers. Only one was moving. 20 minutes later, the survivor was brought into the council chamber. Captain Velkoth looked terrible. His scales were burned. One arm hung uselessly at his side. He could barely stand even with 2 medics supporting him. What happened? Jakara demanded. Velkoth's eyes were wide with fear. We jumped into the Sol system, he said. His voice was hoarse. Our orders were to observe and report. We stayed at maximum sensor range. We didn't even enter the inner system. And, Malthus prompted. They knew we were there, Velkoth said. Immediately. Our stealth systems meant nothing. We detected a ship launching from their 4th planet. Mars. It reached us in 6 minutes. 6 minutes across a distance that should have taken hours. The delegates exchanged worried looks. They hailed us, Velkoth continued. In our own language. Perfect Vaxian. The human asked if we were from the Galactic Council. I didn't answer. I was too shocked. Then she said something I'll never forget. What did she say? Jakara asked. Velkoth looked around the chamber. She said, tell your council we're done being prisoners. Tell them we're coming. Tell them we come in peace, but we won't be caged anymore. Then she fired a warning shot across our bow. It missed by less than 10 meters. We jumped out immediately. Why would they let you go? Someone asked. Why not destroy you? Because they wanted us to deliver the message, Velkoth said. Don't you see? They could have killed us easily, but they let us live. They wanted us to come here, to tell you what's coming. Jakara felt cold. They're not asking permission, he said. They're making a statement. Velkoth nodded weakly. Then he looked directly at Jakara. Ambassador, there's something else. When I saw their planet through our sensors, Mars was covered in construction. Orbital shipyards, thousands of them. And Earth, he swallowed hard. Earth was surrounded by a ring of stations. Defense platforms. They've turned their entire system into a fortress. How long would that take? Malthus asked. Decades, Velkoth said. Maybe a century. They've been building this for a very long time. The chamber erupted again, but Jakara barely heard it. He stared at the hologram showing those 847 ships moving toward council space. Humans had spent 200 years preparing. While the council watched and waited, humans had been planning their response. They weren't victims anymore. They weren't prisoners. They were coming, and the galaxy wasn't ready. The Threshold 7 system sat on the edge of council space like a warning sign. It was the last system before the great dark between spiral arms. Beyond it was nothing but empty space for thousands of light years. It was the perfect place to meet an unknown threat. Fleet Commander Jakara stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vigilance. Around his ship, 200 Council warships waited in formation. They represented the military might of 47 civilizations. Every ship was armed and ready. "It's supposed to be a diplomatic meeting," his second officer said nervously. "Why does it feel like we're preparing for war?" "Because we are," Shakara replied honestly. "We just hope we don't have to fight." The council had debated for 3 days after Captain Velkoth delivered his message. Some wanted to attack humans immediately. Others wanted to run and hide. In the end, they decided on this meeting. A show of strength combined with an offer of dialogue. High Coordinator Melthos's voice crackled over the communication channel. "All ships maintain formation. Weapons charged but not locked. Remember, we want to appear strong but not aggressive." Shakara almost laughed. 200 warships wasn't aggressive? But he understood the logic. Humans respected strength, or at least that's what the council hoped. "Contact," the sensor officer announced.
FTL signatures detected?
"Multiple contacts. Lots of them. How many?" Shakara asked. The sensor officer's voice shook. 847, sir." Exactly as predicted. The view screen changed. Space itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged from what looked like tiers in reality. They didn't use the standard hyperlanes that everyone else relied on. They simply appeared as if stepping through doorways. Shakara stared at the human fleet. The ships were unlike anything he had ever seen. No graceful curves, no artistic designs. They were blocky and efficient, covered in overlapping plates that looked like scales or scars. Each ship bristled with weapons, railguns, missile pods, energy cannons, even a few weapons that sensors couldn't identify. But what struck him most was how organized they were. 800 ships moving as one. Perfect formation. Perfect timing. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "They're not pointing weapons at us," his tactical officer noted with surprise. It was true. The human ships faced the council fleet, but their weapons remained cold. Waiting. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer said. "They're broadcasting on 23 different frequencies. In 23 languages." Shakara felt his scales prickle. "They know all our languages?" "Apparently, sir." "Put it through." A human face appeared on screen. She was female with dark hair and warm brown skin. Her eyes were calm but alert. The text on screen identified her as Captain Maria Chen of the TCSV Indomitable. "Greetings, Galactic Council Fleet," she said in perfect Vaxian. "I am Captain Chen representing the Terran Commonwealth. We come in peace and hope to speak with your leaders." Her voice was pleasant, professional. But Shakara noticed something else. Behind her on the bridge, human crew members worked calmly. No panic, no fear. They acted like meeting an alien fleet was just another day at work. Shakara activated his own communication. "I am Fleet Commander Shakara of the Vaxian Defense Force, speaking for the Galactic Council. We welcome you to Council Space." Captain Chen smiled slightly. "Thank you, Commander. We appreciate the welcome. And the impressive fleet. 200 ships is quite a greeting party." Was she mocking them? Shakara couldn't tell. "We felt it appropriate given the circumstances," he said carefully. "You destroyed our monitoring stations." "We dismantled them," Chen corrected. "We were very careful not to harm anyone. All personnel were evacuated before we began. We even left their personal belongings in escape pods nearby." Shakara checked his data files. She was right. All station personnel had been recovered safely. "Why dismantle them at all?" "Because the quarantine is over," a new voice said. Another human appeared on screen next to Captain Chen. He was older, with dark skin and gray hair. The text identified him as Admiral James Okonkwo, commander of the entire Terran Armada. "For 200 years, you've kept us locked in our own system," Admiral Okonkwo said. His voice was deep and steady. "You watched us, studied us, judged us, all without ever speaking to us. That ends today." "You were dangerous," Shakara said. "You still are. We counted your weapons. We saw your wars." "Yes, we were violent," Okonkwo agreed. "We fought terrible wars. We made horrible mistakes. But that was then. We've changed, have you?" Malthos's voice cut in. "You arrive with 800 warships. You speak of peace while showing us your teeth." Admiral Okonkwo leaned forward. "High Coordinator, let me be clear. We don't want war. We want to join the galaxy as equals. But we learned something important from our history. Peace only works when backed by strength. The weak are conquered, the strong are respected. So you threaten us?" Shakara asked. No, Captain Chen said. We're showing you that threatening us would be unwise. There's a difference, Shakara felt a chill. These humans understood power politics better than most council members. We want to show you something, Admiral Okonkwo continued. With your permission, we'd like to transmit data files. Our history. Our culture. What we've accomplished in the last 200 years. And if we refuse? Malthus asked. Then we'll wait, Okonkwo said simply. We've waited 2 centuries. We can wait a bit longer. But understand this, we're not leaving. We're not going back into our cage. This conversation will happen one way or another. We'd prefer it to be peaceful. Shakara looked at his tactical display. The human ships still hadn't powered their weapons. They just sat there, waiting, patient. That patience was somehow more frightening than any threat. Send your files, Malthus said finally. We'll review them. Thank you, Captain Chen said. Transmitting now. Data began flooding council networks. Shakara pulled up some files on his personal screen. What he saw shocked him. Images of Earth transformed. Cities of glass and green spaces. Orbital stations surrounding the planet like a crown. Mars covered in domed colonies and terraforming equipment. But there were other images too. Humans working together. Different races and cultures united. Hospitals, schools, research stations. They had achieved things the Council thought impossible for such a young species. This is propaganda, someone muttered over the command channel, showing us only their best. But Shakara wasn't so sure. He pulled up a file labeled The Revelation Wars. It showed human conflict from 2025 to 2028, battles between nations, cities damaged, thousands dead. The humans weren't hiding their violence. They were being honest about it. The file explained how humans had reacted to discovering they were being watched. Initial paranoia, then anger, then brief wars as old tensions exploded. But then something changed. Humans realized they were proving the Council right, that they were showing the galaxy exactly what it feared most. So they stopped. Not all at once, not easily, but they stopped. They united. They decided that if the galaxy saw them as monsters, they would prove the galaxy wrong. How did they know we were watching? Shakara asked. Admiral Okonkwo answered. We didn't at first, but we noticed patterns, radio signals that never reached where they should, satellites that occasionally malfunctioned for no reason, strange readings at the edge of our system. We're very good at seeing patterns, Commander. It's one of our strengths. Once we knew you were there, we started watching back. Watching back? Malthus asked sharply. Explain. Captain Chen took over. Your monitoring stations broadcast data. Encrypted, yes, but not impossible to intercept. We couldn't break your codes, but we could follow your ships when they left. We built stealth probes. Very small, very quiet. Over the decades, we mapped your territory, learned your languages, studied your cultures. The Council delegates were silent. The implications were staggering. While they had watched humans, humans had been watching them. You've been in our space, Shakara demanded. For how long? 70 years, Okonkwo said calmly. We started small, single probes, then more sophisticated ones. We never interfered, never revealed ourselves. We just watched and learned. Like you did to us, Shakara felt dizzy. 70 years. Humans had been studying the Council for 70 years, and no one had noticed. Why reveal this now? Malthus asked. Because secrets make poor foundations for diplomacy, Admiral Okonkwo said. We want to start our relationship honestly. Yes, we've spied on you. Yes, we've built a massive military. Yes, we're showing up at your border with overwhelming force. But we're being honest about all of it. That has to count for something. Shakara looked at the human fleet again. 800 ships, all of them perfectly positioned. All of them clearly built by a species that understood warfare intimately. But none of them had fired a shot. What do you want? He asked finally. Captain Chen smiled. What we've always wanted, Commander. To be free, to explore, to meet our neighbors, to trade and talk and learn. We want to join the galaxy. And if we say no? Shakara asked. The smile faded. Then we'll be disappointed, she said. But we won't go away. We'll stay here at your border and wait for you to change your minds, however long it takes. Admiral Okonkwo added. We're very patient when we need to be, and very persistent. It's another one of our strengths. Shakara believed him. These weren't the primitive, violent humans the Council had quarantined 2 centuries ago. These were humans who had learned patience. Who had the Galactic Council chamber had never been this crowded. Every delegate was present. No one wanted to miss this. Ambassador Jakara sat in his designated seat, watching as a human shuttle docked with the station. They were letting humans aboard. Onto Concordia Prime itself. Some delegates had protested. Many were terrified. But High Coordinator Melthos had made the decision. If they were going to judge humanity, they needed to hear from humans directly. The chamber doors opened. 3 humans walked in. Jakara studied them carefully. The first was Admiral Okonkwo, who he had spoken with at Threshold 7. The second was Captain Chen. The third was a woman he didn't recognize. She was small, with Asian features and black hair tied back neatly. She carried a datapad and walked with quiet confidence. "Members of the Galactic Council," Admiral Okonkwo said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. This is Dr. Sarah Kim, our xenoanthropologist. She has prepared something we call the Humanity Dossier. It contains everything you need to know about us. Our history, our culture, our progress. We hide nothing." Dr. Kim stepped forward. She touched her datapad and a massive hologram appeared above the council floor. It showed Earth, blue and green and beautiful. "Home," Dr. Kim said simply. "This is where we come from. And before we go any further, I want to address what everyone is thinking. You're afraid of us. That's okay. We understand fear. We've felt it ourselves." She changed the image. Now it showed a collage of human history. Wars, weapons, destruction. "Yes, we were violent," Dr. Kim continued. "This is not propaganda. This is truth. For thousands of years we fought each other. We invented terrible weapons. We caused suffering. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times." The delegates murmured. At least the humans were being honest. "But here's what you need to understand," Dr. Kim said. She changed the image again. Now it showed a timeline. 203 years ago, something happened that changed everything. "We detected your monitoring stations. It took us 5 years to be certain, but we figured it out. We were being watched." Jakara shifted uncomfortably. He had been young when the quarantine started. He remembered the debates, the fear, the decision to isolate humanity. "Our reaction was complicated," Dr. Kim said. The hologram showed news broadcasts, panic, protests, military buildups. Some nations accused each other of faking the evidence. Some wanted to try to communicate. Some wanted to prepare for invasion. For 3 years, tensions rose. Then in 2028, war broke out. The hologram showed battles, cities burning, soldiers fighting. But compared to earlier wars, it was smaller, more controlled. "The Revelation Wars lasted only 7 months," Dr. Kim explained. 32,000 people died. That sounds like a lot, but for us it was incredibly small. Why? Because in the middle of fighting, we realized something. We were proving you right. We were showing the galaxy exactly why you quarantined us. She paused, letting that sink in. "So we stopped," Dr. Kim said. "Not easily. Not peacefully at first. But we stopped." Leaders from every nation met in Geneva. They asked themselves a question. Did we want to be the monsters the galaxy thought we were? Or did we want to be better? The hologram changed. It showed a massive gathering. Thousands of humans from every nation on Earth. "This is the Geneva Assembly," Dr. Kim said. It lasted 2 years. Every nation sent representatives. Every major religion. Every significant cultural group. They argued. They fought with words instead of weapons. And slowly, painfully, they built something new. The Terran Commonwealth. The hologram showed documents, treaties, agreements, all signed by hundreds of leaders. "We didn't become perfect," Dr. Kim said honestly. We still argued. We still disagreed. But we learned to do it without killing each other. We learned to compromise. We learned that being strong meant protecting everyone, not just ourselves. A Krelian delegate spoke up. "You expect us to believe you simply stopped fighting? That goes against everything we know about your psychology." Dr. Kim smiled. "No, we didn't stop fighting. We redirected it. Let me show you." The hologram changed again. It showed humans in environmental suits working on Mars. "We declared war on our limitations. We fought to terraform Mars. Thousands worked for decades. Many died in accidents. But we kept going. That's what humans do. We fight. But we chose to fight against nature instead of each other." Another image. Humans in laboratories. "We declared war on disease, cancer, genetic disorders, aging itself. We fought these enemies instead of each other." Another image. Massive ships under construction. And yes, we built weapons. We built the Armada because we knew that eventually you would come to check on us, and we wanted to be ready, not to conquer you but to stand as equals. But why so many ships? Malthus asked. 800 warships is not a peaceful gesture. Admiral Okonkwo stepped forward. With respect, High Coordinator, we studied your history too. We know about the Vaxian subjugation wars. We know about the species that disappeared after refusing to join the Council. We know the galaxy is not always peaceful. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted denials. Others demanded to know how humans had learned these secrets. Chikara felt sick. The Vaxian subjugation wars were ancient history, classified. His people had conquered 17 species before joining the Council and embracing peace. How did humans know? Dr. Kim raised her voice. We're not here to judge you. Every species has a dark past, including us. We're here to show you that we learned from ours. Can you say the same? The chamber fell silent. You're afraid because we're predators, Dr. Kim continued. But 6 species on this council evolved as predators. You're afraid because we come from a dangerous planet. But 3 other species here come from high-gravity worlds with extreme environments. You're afraid because we fought each other, but almost every species here has fought civil wars. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of different delegates. The real reason you're afraid is because we're persistent. We don't give up, ever. When we commit to something, we see it through no matter the cost. That scares you because you can't predict us, you can't control us, and you can't make us quit. Captain Chen spoke up. We've seen what happens to species that show weakness. The Zalari asked nicely to join the council. They had no military. They were peaceful. You made them wait 50 years while you evaluated them. They became a protectorate, not full members. They still don't have voting rights. That's different, someone protested. They weren't ready for full membership. Really? Admiral Okonkwo asked. Or were they just too weak to demand it? We read your charter. It says species must demonstrate the ability to defend their own sovereignty. The Zalari couldn't do that, so they got half membership. Second-class status. Chikara knew it was true. The council respected strength. Always had. The Zalari were advanced and peaceful, but they had no military to speak of. So they remained under council protection, forever dependent. We won't make that mistake, Captain Chen said firmly. We come with ships because ships mean respect. We come with weapons because weapons mean sovereignty. We come as equals because we have the power to enforce equality. This is blackmail, a delegate accused. No, Dr. Kim said. This is diplomacy backed by strength. There's a difference. We're not threatening you. We're showing you that threatening us would be pointless. We don't want to fight, but we can if we must, and you need to understand that before we move forward. Malthus glowed brighter. You speak of peace while brandishing weapons. You claim to have changed while demonstrating your capacity for violence. How are we supposed to trust you? Dr. Kim changed the hologram one more time. It showed human colonies, schools full of young humans learning about dozens of alien cultures, hospitals where human doctors practiced xenomedicine, research stations studying council technology and improving on it. Trust is earned, Dr. Kim said. We know that. So let us earn it. Allow human doctors to work in your hospitals. Let our engineers collaborate with yours. Permit our merchants to trade in your markets. Let us prove through actions that we've changed, and if we refuse, Chikara heard himself ask. Admiral Okonkwo met his eyes. Then we wait at your border. We don't leave. We don't attack. We just wait, and while we wait, we keep building, keep growing, keep becoming stronger. Eventually, you'll have to choose. Accept us as partners or face us as rivals. We'd prefer the first option. That still sounds like a threat, Malthus said. It's reality, Captain Chen replied. We're here. We're not going away. You can work with us or against us, but you can't ignore us. Not anymore. Dr. Kim pulled up one final image. It showed young humans and young aliens playing together. The image was clearly fake, computer-generated. But the symbolism was clear. This is what we want, Dr. Kim said softly. Not conquest. Not domination. Just a place in the galaxy, a chance to learn from you and teach you, a chance to grow together instead of apart. We've spent 200 years preparing for this moment. We've unified our species. We've conquered our worst instincts. We've built a civilization worthy of the stars. She looked around the chamber. We're not perfect. We'll make mistakes. We'll sometimes be difficult. But we're here with open hands and hone. The debate had gone on for 6 days. Chikara was exhausted. The council chamber had become a battlefield of words. Some delegates wanted to accept humanity, others refused. The votes kept changing as arguments went back and forth, then the alarms went off. Emergency transmission from Sector 9, a technician announced. Colonies under attack, multiple systems, unknown aggressors. The hologram in the center of the chamber changed. It showed a star map. Across the outer edge of council space, red markers appeared, one after another. Dozens of them. What is attacking? Melthos demanded. A new transmission came through. The image was broken and filled with static. A Lumini officer appeared, her crystal body cracked and dim. Behind her, fires burned. This is Commander Silara from Outpost 93. We are under attack by unknown forces, biomechanical entities. They're not trying to conquer. They're consuming everything, everyone. We need... The transmission cut off. The hologram showed the outpost's location going dark. Bring up sensor data, Jakara ordered, moving to a command console. His role as fleet commander suddenly very relevant. What he saw made his blood run cold. The attackers moved in swarms. Thousands of small ships supported by larger vessels that looked more organic than mechanical. They hit colonies with overwhelming force, stripped them of all biological matter, then moved on. The Skorath, Melthos whispered. The swarm from beyond the galactic barrier. We thought they were a myth. They're real, Jakara said grimly, and they're already through our outer defenses. According to this data, we've lost 40% of our defensive fleet in 3 days. They hit us before we even knew they were coming. Another transmission came in, this time from Admiral Kethral, commanding the Council's 3rd Fleet. His face was covered in wounds. This is Admiral Kethral. The Skorath are using weapons we've never encountered. Suicide drones, biological weapons that convert our own people into more of them. They broadcast on all frequencies showing what they do to prisoners. It's psychological warfare. Half my crew is too terrified to fight effectively. We're falling back to the Crucible system. We need reinforcements immediately. The transmission ended. The council chamber was silent. Then everyone started talking at once. Panic. Fear. Accusations about who should have seen this coming. Jakara wasn't listening. He was looking at the strategic display. The Skorath were pushing inward along a wide front. If they weren't stopped, they would reach core council worlds within weeks. We need to mobilize everything, Melthos said. Every ship, every soldier. It won't be enough, Jakara said quietly. Look at the numbers. They outnumber us 5-1, and they don't care about casualties. They just keep coming. Then what do? Someone demanded. Jakara looked at the star map. Then he looked at the marker showing where the human fleet waited at Threshold 7. He made a decision. We ask for help, he said. The chamber erupted again. Some delegates shouted that they would rather die than accept human aid. Others argued that they had no choice. The debate might have gone on for hours. High Coordinator Melthos raised her voice above the noise.
Enough! Fleet Commander Jakara is right.
We need help. And right now there are 800 fresh warships sitting at our border doing nothing. I'm authorizing contact with the human fleet. She opened a channel before anyone could protest. Admiral Okonkwo, this is High Coordinator Melthos. We require your assistance against an external threat. Will you help us? There was a pause. Then Admiral Okonkwo's face appeared on screen. Behind him, his bridge crew was already moving with purpose. We've been monitoring your emergency broadcasts, Okonkwo said. We're already underway. We should reach the Crucible system in 6 hours. You're already moving? Jakara asked in surprise. We just called you. Captain Chen appeared next to the Admiral. We saw your fleet positions shifting. We saw the distress calls. We didn't need permission to help people who are dying. How did you get past our sensor grid? A delegate demanded. We've been inside your sensor grid for 70 years, Chen reminded them. We told you that. Your security needs work, by the way. We can help with that later. Right now, let's focus on not being eaten by space locusts. Admiral Okonkwo pulled up tactical displays. We've been studying your defensive positions. With your permission, I'd like to suggest a joint strategy. You've been studying our defenses? Melthos asked sharply. For decades, Okonkwo said without apology. It's what we do. Be grateful for it now. We know your fleet's strengths and weaknesses. We know where the Skorath are coming from, and we know how to stop them. How? Jakara asked. By fighting the way we've always fought, Captain Chen said. Together. Combined arms. Mutual support. And by being too stubborn to lose. 6 hours later, the human fleet arrived at the Crucible system. Jakara watched from his flagship as 800 human warships dropped out of FTL in perfect formation. They slotted into position alongside the battered Council fleet, without a single communication error. Human vessels in position, his tactical officer reported. They're transmitting tactical data to all Council ships. Strategic updates, threat assessments. It's more detailed than anything our own sensors provide. Jakara opened a channel to Admiral Okonkwo. You're sharing your sensor data with us? Of course, Okonkwo replied. We're allies now. Allies share information. Your ships are broadcasting on 83 different tactical channels with 17 different encryption protocols. We've linked them all into one network. Every ship in this fleet can now talk to every other ship instantly. You're welcome. Before Jakara could respond, the Skorath arrived. They came in a wave. Thousands of small ships supported by massive biomechanical cruisers. They looked like they were grown rather than built. Organic hulls covered in armor plates. Weapons that looked like giant claws and teeth. All ships engage, Admiral Kethral ordered. The battle began. Council ships opened fire with beam weapons and missiles. The Skorath ships scattered and reformed, moving like a school of fish. Their smaller vessels launched themselves at Council ships in suicide runs. When they hit, they didn't just explode. They burrowed into hulls, releasing biological agents that tried to convert the ship's crew. Jakara watched 3 Council frigates get overwhelmed in the first 5 minutes. His heart sank. They couldn't win this. Then the human fleet opened fire. It was like nothing he had ever seen. Human ships didn't use elegant beam weapons. They used railguns that threw solid metal at a fraction of light speed. They used missiles that moved with terrifying intelligence, dodging countermeasures and striking weak points. They used something called nuclear mines that vaporized entire clusters of Skorath fighters. But what shocked him most was the tactics. Human ships worked in groups of 3. One ship would provide covering fire while another close to point-blank range. The third would hang back, ready to support whoever needed it. They rotated positions constantly, never giving the Skorath a clear target. Human cruiser group. Delta is engaging the enemy flagship. His tactical officer reported. Jakara watched in horror as 3 human ships flew directly toward a massive Skorath biocruiser. The enemy vessel was 10 times their size. It should have torn them apart, but the humans didn't slow down. They accelerated. All 3 ships focused fire on a single point in the enemy's armor. Railgun rounds hammered the same spot over and over. When the armor broke, they launched missiles straight into the wound. The Skorath ship convulsed. Then it exploded from the inside out. They killed it, someone whispered. They actually killed one of the big ones. Look at their crews, another officer said. Patching through human communications, Jakara listened in shock. The humans were singing. In the middle of a desperate battle, they were singing war songs over their communication channels. Songs about not giving up, about fighting until the end, about victory or death. They're insane, his tactical officer said. No, Jakara said slowly. They're human. A distress call came from a Vaxian colony ship. It was full of civilians trying to escape. A swarm of Skorath fighters was closing in. We can't reach them in time, Admiral Kethral said grimly. I can. Captain Chen's voice cut in. Her ship, the Indomitable, broke formation and accelerated toward the colony ship. She was too far away. Everyone knew it. But she went anyway. The Skorath fighters reached the colony ship first. They began cutting through the hull. Inside, thousands of Vaxian civilians waited to die. Then the Indomitable arrived. Not alongside the colony ship. Through it. Captain Chen brought her ship so close that her shields overlapped with the colony ship's hull. Any Skorath fighter that tried to attack had to go through a human warship first. The Indomitable's point defense weapons lit up. Thousands of small cannons fired continuously, creating a wall of metal around the colony ship. Skorath fighters exploded by the dozens, but more kept coming. Captain Chen's shields are failing, Jakara's tactical officer reported. Hull breaches on multiple decks. She needs to pull back. But Captain Chen didn't pull back. Her ship stayed in position, protecting the colony ship even as Skorath drones began tearing into her hull. This is Fleet Commander Jakara to Captain Chen, Jakara said. Fall back. We'll send support. Negative, Chen's voice came back. She sounded calm despite the chaos around her. These people need protection now. We'll hold. You'll be killed. Maybe, Chen admitted. But they won't be. Isn't that what matters? Jakara made 6 months had passed since the Battle of Crucible. Ambassador Jakara stood at the window of his quarters on Concordia Prime, looking out at the stars. The galaxy looked the same from here, but everything had changed. He could see it in the orbital traffic, human cargo ships moving between stations, human passenger vessels bringing tourists to see the Council homeworlds, human construction crews helping to rebuild damaged stations. They were everywhere now, integrated into galactic society as if they had always been there. Jakara checked his datapad. The Council vote was scheduled for today. The final vote, the one that would make humanity's membership permanent and official. He already knew how it would go. After Crucible, after humans had bled alongside Council forces, after they had proven themselves, the outcome was certain. But the formality still mattered. His door chimed. "Come in," he called. High Coordinator Melthos entered, her crystal body glowing softly. "Are you ready for the ceremony?" "I think so," Jakara said. "It feels strange. 6 months ago I was terrified of humans. Now I'm about to welcome them as equals. More than equals in some ways," Melthos said. She pulled up a holographic report. Human medical teams have saved 4 million lives across Council space. Their doctors discovered that human immune systems can synthesize antibodies for diseases that plague our species. They've been sharing the treatment freely. "I heard about that," Jakara said. "I also heard about human agriculture." Melthos nodded. "They're teaching us farming techniques we never imagined. Something called permaculture, the drought on Kelvara 4. Human engineers solved it in 3 weeks. They've been working on it for 50 years without success. What about the military situation?" Jakara asked. Melthos's glow dimmed slightly. "Mixed. Human tactical doctrine is being adopted across Council fleets. Their training methods are intense but effective. Our soldiers are learning things we never taught them. Like what? How to fight when everything seems hopeless. How to push beyond what seems possible. How to never surrender." Melthos paused. "It's frightening and inspiring at the same time." Jakara understood. Humans had brought more than just technology and medicine. They'd brought a mentality. A way of thinking that said no problem was unsolvable, no enemy was unbeatable, no situation was truly hopeless. "There's more." Melthos continued. She showed him another report. Human entertainment is becoming incredibly popular. Something called jazz music is being played in clubs across Council space. Human literature is being translated into hundreds of languages. Their films are breaking attendance records. Why? Jakara asked. What do they have that we don't? Passion, Melthos said simply. Humans feel everything intensely. They create art about struggle and triumph, about love and loss, about fighting against impossible odds and sometimes winning. It resonates with people. It makes them feel things they've never felt before. Jakara thought about the human singing he'd heard during the battle. Those war songs, full of emotion and determination. It had been terrifying but also strangely beautiful. Come on, Melthos said. We don't want to be late. They made their way to the council chamber. It was packed. Every seat was filled. Dozens of observers stood in the galleries. This was history in the making. Admiral Okonkwo stood at the center of the chamber floor. Next to him was Ambassador Kenji Tanaka, humanity's designated council representative. The old admiral had retired from military service to take a diplomatic role. Captain Chen commanded the fleet now. Jakara took his seat and looked around. He caught the eye of Captain Velkoth, the scout who had brought humanity's first message. Velkoth nodded to him. The captain's injuries had healed, but he still walked with a slight limp. High Coordinator Melthos called the session to order. We gathered today to vote on the full admission of humanity into the Galactic Council. Before we vote, does anyone wish to speak? Several delegates stood. One by one, they shared their experiences with humans over the past 6 months. A Lumine scientist spoke about working with human researchers to develop new power sources. A Krillian merchant discussed profitable trade routes with human colonies. A Vaxian colony administrator talked about human engineers who had rebuilt her entire settlement in weeks. But it was a young Vaxian that caught Jakara's attention. She couldn't have been more than 20 standard years old. She stood nervously. My name is Telsara, she said. I was on the colony ship at Crucible. I was 8 years old. I remember being terrified when the Skorath attacked. I remember my mother holding me, telling me it would be okay even though she was crying. Then I remember this huge ship appearing next to us. The Indomitable, a human ship. She paused, gathering her courage. I watched through a viewport as that ship took hit after hit. I saw pieces of armor flying off. I saw fires burning inside their hull, but they never left. They stayed between us and the enemy. They protected us even though they were dying. Telsara's voice grew stronger. Later I met Captain Chin. I asked her why she risked her life for us. We were strangers. Her people weren't even part of the council yet. She smiled and said because someone needed help and we were there. That's all. No grand speech. No expectation of reward. Just simple human kindness. She looked around the chamber. I'm studying xenomedicine now. I want to be a doctor. I want to help people the way humans helped us. If we say no to them today, we're saying no to everything they represent. Courage, compassion, the refusal to give up. I don't think the galaxy can afford to reject that. She sat down. The chamber was silent. High Coordinator Melthos spoke. Thank you, Telsara. Are there any who wish to speak against admission? No one stood. Even the delegates who had opposed humanity 6 months ago remained seated. Crucible had changed everything. Then we vote, Melthos said. All those in favor of granting full council membership to humanity indicate now. Jakara raised his hand. So did Melthos. Around the chamber, hand after hand went up. Or tentacles. Or energy fields. Whatever each species used to vote. The vote is unanimous, Melthos announced. Humanity is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities therein. Ambassador Tanaka, please step forward. Kenji Tanaka walked to the center of the chamber. He was an older human with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been a diplomat on Earth before being chosen for this role. Malthus handed him a crystal pendant. This marks your authority as a council member. You speak for humanity now. Use that voice wisely, Tanaka bowed. On behalf of humanity, I accept. We come not as conquerors or masters, but as partners and friends. We bring our strength, our knowledge, and our determination. But we also come to learn from you. To grow with you. To build a better galaxy together. The chamber erupted in applause. Even species that didn't normally show emotion were expressing approval in their own ways. Admiral Okonkwo stepped forward. There's one more piece of business, he said. The Council has asked humanity to participate in something called the Guardian Protocol. We'd like to formally accept. Jakara leaned forward. The Guardian Protocol was ancient. A secret defense pact created thousands of years ago, when the first Council species encountered threats from beyond the galaxy. It had been dormant for centuries. The Skora threat remains, Okonkwo continued. They've retreated, but they'll come back. Stronger, more numerous. The Council needs a dedicated defense force, not for internal security, but for external threats, species that might destroy us all. He pulled up a hologram. It showed plans for massive defense stations, fleets of mixed-species ships, training centers, research facilities. Humanity volunteers to lead this effort, Okonkwo said, not alone. Together with any species that wishes to join us. We'll build a wall around Council space. We'll guard the gates. We'll make sure no threat ever catches us unprepared again. Why would humans take on this burden? A delegate asked. Okonkwo smiled. Because it's what we do. We protect. It's in our nature. Back on Earth we have a saying, those who can, must. We can protect the galaxy. Therefore we must. The vote to include humans in the Guardian Protocol was also unanimous. Later, after the ceremony ended, Jakara found himself in a small bar on the station. It was a human establishment newly opened. Jazz music played from speakers. The sound was strange but pleasant. Admiral Okonkwo sat at the bar nursing something called whiskey. He saw Jakara and waved him over. Ambassador, Okonkwo said warmly. Join me for a drink? Jakara sat down. The bartender, a human woman, brought him something called wine. It was surprisingly good. We did it, Jakara said. You're officially one of us now. Were we ever really separate? Okonkwo asked. We're all living beings trying to survive in a dangerous universe. Seems like we should stick together. I was terrified of you 6 months ago, Jakara admitted. Your fleet, your weapons, your entire demeanor. You seemed like conquerors. And now I understand. You weren't preparing to conquer. You were preparing to survive. To be taken seriously. To never be victims again. Jakara took a sip of wine. I respect that. I wish we had understood sooner. Okonkwo nodded. We could have handled it better too. Showing up with 800 warships wasn't exactly subtle, but we needed you to see us as equals from the start. Respect has to be earned, but strength